Zisha stood in the middle of the arena, her body bruised and aching. The twin suns of Viresh burned above, making the air thick and heavy. Around her, dozens of Viresha warriors watched in silence. Their glowing red eyes were filled with disappointment. She had failed. Again. Her opponent, her own brother, towered over her. His deep blue scales shimmered under the sunlight. His powerful arms crossed over his chest. "You are weak, Zisha," he said, his voice cold. "A disgrace to our family." Zisha swallowed the lump in her throat. She had trained for this moment her whole life. This was supposed to be her victory, the day she would prove herself. But no matter how hard she fought, she was always slower, weaker. She had been born smaller than the others, and in Viresha culture, strength was everything. Her father, High Warlord Karzak, stood from his stone throne. His golden armor gleamed as he stepped forward. "Zisha," he said, his voice echoing through the arena, "you are no daughter of mine. You are unworthy of the Viresha name." The words hit her like a blade to the heart. She gasped, looking up at him in shock. "No, father. Please, I can be better. I will train harder." But Karzak turned away. "There is no place for the weak in our clan. You are exiled." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some warriors sneered at her. Others simply looked away, as if she no longer existed. 2 guards grabbed her arms. Zisha struggled, but it was useless. They dragged her out of the arena, past the gates, and into the wastelands beyond the city. Hours later, she sat on a cold rock, staring at the endless desert before her. The sky had turned dark, the twin moons rising high. She was alone now. No family, no home, no future. She clenched her fists. "I won't survive out here." But just as the thought crossed her mind, she heard something. A strange humming noise. She turned her head and saw lights in the distance. A ship was landing. Zisha narrowed her eyes. No Viresha warrior would waste time coming for her. Who could it be? The ship touched down, its engines hissing as the ramp lowered. The lone figure stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing armor unlike anything Zisha had seen before. His face was smooth, his skin pale compared to the dark scales of her people. His eyes, small but sharp, studied her with curiosity. A human. He walked toward her, hands resting casually at his sides. "Well," he said, his voice deep and confident, "you look like someone in need of a second chance." Zisha frowned. "Who are you?" He smirked. "Name's Darius Kane. And if you want to stop being weak, I can help you." Zisha hesitated. Trusting an outsider was against her people's ways. But she had nothing left to lose. She took a deep breath and stood up. "Teach me." Darius grinned. "Good answer." Zisha followed Darius up the ramp of his ship, her heart pounding. She had never been inside a human ship before. The metal walls were smooth, glowing lights ran along the ceiling, and the air smelled strange, like oil and something burnt. It was nothing like the stone halls of her people. Darius walked ahead, his steps easy and confident. He was different from the Viresha warriors. He wasn't the biggest or the strongest, yet there was something powerful about him. He led her to a small room filled with weapons. Blades, guns, and strange devices covered the walls. Zisha's eyes widened. "Are you a warrior?" she asked. Darius chuckled. "Something like that. Mercenary, bounty hunter, problem solver, you name it." He grabbed a small silver device and tossed it to her. She caught it awkwardly. It was lighter than she expected. "What is this?" she asked. "A shock blade," Darius said. "Press the button." Zisha did. A blue energy blade sprang to life with a sharp hum. She stared at it, mesmerized. The weapon was elegant, fast, nothing like the heavy war axes her people used. Darius folded his arms. "You want to get stronger, right?" Zisha tightened her grip on the blade. "Yes." "Good, but strength isn't just about muscles." He tapped the side of his head. "It's about how you think, how you move. Your people rely too much on brute force. That's why they threw you away. Anger flared in Zisha's chest. I am not weak. Darius raised an eyebrow. Then prove it. Before she could react, he moved. Fast. One moment he was standing still. The next he was behind her. Something hard pressed against her back. Dead, he said. Zisha spun around, her heart racing. How? You're predictable, Darius said. Big warriors like your people think size wins fights, but speed, intelligence, and strategy, those win wars. She clenched her jaw. She had spent her whole life trying to be like the Varesha, strong, unstoppable. But maybe that was the wrong path. Darius tossed her a second blade. Lesson 1. Never fight strength with strength. You're smaller, so use it. Be faster. Be smarter. Think before you strike. Zisha nodded, gripping the weapons tighter. I will learn. Darius grinned. Let's see if you mean that. He lunged. Zisha barely had time to react. She dodged, but not fast enough. His foot hooked her leg, and she crashed to the floor. Pain shot up her back. Darius looked down at her. Not bad for your first try. Get up. We go again. Zisha groaned but pushed herself up. She would not fail. Not this time. As Darius raised his blades, Zisha took a deep breath. She had been weak before, but not anymore. This was only the beginning. Zisha's muscles ached. Sweat dripped from her brow as she gasped for breath. She gripped the shock blade tightly, her hands shaking. Across from her, Darius stood relaxed, barely out of breath. Again, he said. Zisha gritted her teeth. She charged forward, swinging the blade at his chest. But Darius sidestepped easily. Before she could react, he struck her wrist, making her drop the weapon. A second later, he swept her legs, sending her crashing to the floor. Pain shot through her body. She groaned and rolled onto her back. Darius sighed. You're still thinking like a Varesha. Strength, attack, overpower. That won't work against someone faster or smarter. Zisha sat up, frustrated. Then what should I do? Darius crouched beside her, drawing a line on the floor with his finger. Think of fighting like a game of movement. Your people charge straight at their enemy, like a hammer hitting a wall. But what happens if the enemy moves? Zisha frowned. The attack misses. Darius nodded. Exactly. A warrior who only attacks in one way is easy to defeat. You need to adapt. Use speed, deception, and surprise. Zisha slowly stood, rubbing her sore arms. And how do I do that? Darius smirked. We start with lesson 2, unpredictability. The next day, Zisha stood in the ship's training room, blindfolded. This is stupid, she muttered. Darius chuckled. Your eyes make you lazy. You rely on sight instead of instinct. If you want to be fast, you have to feel the fight before it happens. Zisha heard movement. She spun and swung her blade, only to hit empty air. A sharp pain touched her side as Darius jabbed her lightly with a training staff. Too slow, he said. Zisha growled in frustration. How am I supposed to fight what I can't see? You listen, Darius said. You feel. You predict. Zisha took a deep breath. She focused on the sounds around her. The quiet hum of the ship, the shift of Darius' boots on the floor. Then she moved. Darius struck again, but this time she dodged. Not perfectly, but enough that his staff only grazed her arm. Darius whistled. Not bad. Zisha smirked. I can do this. Weeks passed. The training was brutal. Darius made her fight without weapons, in total darkness, even while exhausted. But Zisha adapted. She learned to strike fast, to move before the enemy expected, to turn weakness into strength. One day, during a sparring match, Zisha did something new. Instead of attacking directly, she faked a strike. Darius reacted, blocking the wrong way, giving her an opening. She spun, sweeping his legs. Darius hit the ground with a grunt. For a moment, there was silence. Then he laughed. Now you're learning." Zisha grinned. For the first time, she felt it. She wasn't weak anymore. Zisha crouched behind a stack of metal crates, her heart pounding. The air smelled of oil and rust. Flickering red lights filled the narrow cargo bay of the abandoned space station. Footsteps echoed nearby, heavy, slow, searching. This wasn't training. This was real. Darius had taken a bounty job, a simple mission to capture a rogue alien smuggler. But things had gone wrong. The smuggler had friends, heavily armed mercenaries. Now, Zisha and Darius were trapped, outnumbered, and outgunned. Across the room, Darius peeked out from behind cover, his blaster ready. He glanced at Zisha. "You remember the plan." Zisha gripped the shock blade at her side. "Yes." "Then move." Zisha took a deep breath and darted forward. Her body moved without thinking, like Darius had taught her. Fast, silent, unpredictable. She weaved between crates, using shadows to hide her movements. The mercenaries had big guns, but they were slow heavy. She was not. A large reptilian alien stood ahead, scanning the area with a rifle. Zisha didn't hesitate. She sprang forward, slashing low. The energy blade sliced through the alien's leg armor. He roared in pain, stumbling. Before he could turn, Zisha spun behind him and struck again, this time at his exposed neck. The shock blade sent a jolt through his body, knocking him unconscious. One down. Blaster fire exploded from the other side of the room. Darius had engaged the other mercenaries, keeping their attention away from Zisha. She moved fast, circling around, just like they had planned. Another mercenary stood near a control panel. He hadn't seen her yet. Perfect. Zisha picked up a loose metal rod from the ground and tossed it toward the far end of the room. The sound made the mercenary turn, just long enough for Zisha to strike. She leaped onto his back, locking her arm around his throat. He struggled, trying to shake her off, but she was quick. She drove her knee into his spine, forcing him down. With one final twist, he fell unconscious. Zisha looked up, breathing hard. 2 down. She turned to see Darius locked in combat with the last mercenary, a massive brute with cybernetic arms. The alien swung at Darius, but the human dodged, rolling under a wild punch. Zisha knew this was her moment. She sprinted forward. The brute didn't see her until it was too late. She jumped, planting her feet on his back, using her momentum to slam him into the ground. Darius wasted no time. He raised his blaster and fired a stun shot, knocking the brute out cold. Silence filled the room. The fight was over. Darius looked at Zisha and smirked. Not bad. Zisha wiped sweat from her brow. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from excitement. She had won her first real fight, and it felt amazing. Zisha sat on the cold floor of Darius' ship, breathing heavily. Her muscles ached from the fight, but she felt something new, pride. She had won. She had fought real enemies and survived. Darius leaned against a crate, arms crossed, watching her with an amused look. "You did well," he said, "but you still have a lot to learn." Zisha wiped sweat from her forehead. "I beat them." Darius smirked. "Yeah, but you got lucky. Luck won't always save you." He stepped forward and sat across from her. "You want to know why humans are feared in war?" Zisha frowned. "Because you're dangerous." Darius chuckled. "Not in the way you think." He tapped his temple. "We don't just fight with our bodies. We fight with our minds. Planning, strategy, tricks. We win fights before they even start." Zisha listened closely. This was different from what she had been taught. The Varasha believed in strength, in overpowering enemies with brute force. But Darius was saying something else. "How?" she asked. Darius pulled out a small device and activated a hologram. It showed battle scenes, humans fighting against larger, stronger enemies, and winning. "Take Earth's history," Darius said. "We were never the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest. But we adapted. We studied our enemies. We found weaknesses and exploited them. We used deception, ambushes, and misdirection. Zisha watched as a human army lured a stronger force into a trap. The enemy thought they were winning, until they were surrounded. We use fear, Darius continued. Make the enemy doubt. Make them hesitate. That hesitation, he snapped his fingers. That's when we strike. Zisha's mind raced. This is why Darius is so dangerous. He doesn't fight like a warrior. He fights like a hunter. Darius turned off the hologram. Your people fight like a hammer. Humans fight like a knife in the dark. Zisha clenched her fists. Then teach me to fight like a human. Darius grinned. Now we're talking. The next few days were brutal. Darius made Zisha train in ways she never imagined. She had to set traps, predict attacks, and find ways to win without strength. He made her fight without weapons, forcing her to use the environment. He even had her face multiple opponents at once. You can't win a fair fight, he told her. So don't fight fair. At first, Zisha struggled, but she adapted. She learned to feint, to trick opponents into making mistakes. She used speed instead of force. One night, after an exhausting training session, she stood over Darius, her blade at his throat. He grinned. Took you long enough. Zisha stepped back, breathing hard. I am not weak anymore. Darius stood and patted her shoulder. You're learning fast, but you're not ready yet. Zisha smirked. Then I'll train harder. Darius laughed. That's the spirit. Zisha tightened the straps of her combat vest and looked around. The jungle planet of Xyros 9 was nothing like her home. Massive trees stretched into the sky, their thick branches blocking out the sunlight. Strange creatures screeched in the distance, their glowing eyes watching from the shadows. The air smelled damp and heavy with the scent of unknown life. Darius stood beside her, adjusting his blaster. All right, here's the deal, he said. You've learned how to fight. Now, it's time to see if you can survive. Zisha frowned. What do you mean? Darius smirked. Simple. I drop you in the jungle, and you find your way back to the ship. No weapons, no supplies. Just your skills. Zisha's eyes widened. You're leaving me here. Darius shrugged. If you can't survive alone, you're not ready. He patted her shoulder. You've got 24 hours. Good luck. Before Zisha could argue, he turned and walked away. Moments later, his ship blasted into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. She was alone. The jungle was alive with danger. Zisha moved carefully, stepping over thick roots and avoiding the glowing fungi that pulsed with a strange light. She knew nothing about this planet, but she remembered Darius' lessons. Observe, adapt, plan. The first challenge was food. She hadn't eaten since they landed, and hunger gnawed at her stomach. She spotted small bird-like creatures in the trees, too fast to catch. Instead, she searched for edible plants. After some trial and error, she found bitter-tasting berries that didn't make her sick. Next was shelter. Night would bring bigger predators. Zisha climbed a tree and used thick vines to build a sleeping spot high above the ground. She tied herself in so she wouldn't fall. As the sun disappeared, the jungle changed. The sounds grew louder. Deep growls, rustling leaves, snapping branches. Zisha stayed completely still, her body tense. Then she saw it. A massive beast, covered in black fur, with 6 glowing red eyes. It sniffed the air, searching for her. Zisha's heart pounded. She remembered Darius' lesson. Fear makes you slow. Stay calm. Think. The beast climbed the tree, its claws sinking into the bark. Zisha had seconds to act. She grabbed a nearby vine and threw it behind a creature. The rustling noise made it turn, distracted for just a moment. That was all she needed. She swung down, using gravity to kick the beast in the face. It roared and lost its grip, tumbling to the ground below with a heavy thud. Zisha didn't wait to see if it survived. She climbed higher, her breath shaky. She had faced death, and she had won. By morning, she was exhausted but alive. As she reached the clearing, she saw Darius waiting beside his ship, arms crossed. He grinned. "Took you long enough." Zisha smirked. "Next time, make it harder." Darius laughed. "Now that's the spirit." Zisha sat on a crate inside Darius' ship, wrapping a bandage around her arm. The jungle test had pushed her to her limits, but she had survived. She had faced fear, hunger, and death, and she had won. Darius leaned against the wall, watching her with approval. "Not bad, kid. You lasted the whole night without weapons. That means you're ready for the next step." Zisha looked up. "Next step." Darius smirked. "You've learned how to fight. You've learned how to survive. Now, you learn how to hunt." Zisha frowned. "I thought I already did that." Darius chuckled. "Surviving is reacting to danger. Hunting is controlling it." He grabbed his blaster and twirled it. "A warrior fights when attacked. A hunter chooses when and where to strike." Zisha nodded slowly. This was something new, something dangerous. They landed on Voxus 3, a ruined planet covered in abandoned cities. Once it had been home to an alien civilization. Now, only criminals and scavengers roamed the ruins. Darius pointed to a distant building. "There's a gang of raiders inside. They've been stealing supplies from innocent people." He tossed Zisha a small device. "Your mission? Infiltrate, gather intel, and if needed, eliminate the threat." Zisha tightened her grip on the device. This wasn't training anymore. This was real. She moved through the ruined streets, staying low, her steps silent. No brute force, no mistakes, just the hunt. When she reached the building, she climbed a rusted pipe and slipped inside through a broken window. She crouched in the shadows, scanning the area. There were 5 raiders, laughing and drinking. They had weapons, big ones. A direct fight would be suicide. "Think like a human." Zisha smiled. She had an idea. She picked up a small rock and threw it down the hallway. The raiders stopped talking. "What was that?" One muttered. "I'll check." Another said, grabbing his rifle. "Perfect." Zisha moved fast. As the raider passed her hiding spot, she struck, silent, precise. She hit a nerve in his neck, knocking him out instantly. One down. She took his weapon and moved deeper into the building. The next raider stood near a power console. Zisha saw an exposed wire above him. She grabbed a loose pipe and threw it at the wire. Sparks flew, and the lights flickered. "Dan Power's acting up again," the raider muttered. He stepped forward to check, leaving his back exposed. Zisha didn't waste the chance. She struck, quick and deadly. 2 down. The remaining 3 raiders grew nervous. Good. Fear makes them weak. Using the stolen rifle, she fired a shot into a distant wall, making it seem like an attack was coming from outside. The raiders panicked, running to check. Zisha took them down one by one. By the time Darius arrived, the fight was already over. He whistled. "Looks like the student just became the hunter." Zisha grinned. She wasn't prey anymore. She was the predator. Zisha sat on the rooftop of a ruined building, watching the sun set over Voxus 3. The air smelled of rust and smoke. Below, the bodies of the raiders lay still, taken down by her hands. She had won. Again. Darius climbed up beside her, tossing her a water bottle. "You handled yourself well back there." Zisha caught it and took a sip. "I followed the plan." Darius smirked. "You did more than that. You thought like a hunter. You controlled the fight." He looked at her, eyes serious. "How do you feel?" Zisha was silent for a moment. Then she spoke. Strong. And she meant it. For the first time in her life, she wasn't weak. She wasn't helpless. The girl who had been cast out by her own people was gone. In her place stood something new, something powerful. Darius nodded. "Good. Because we have a problem. Zisha tensed. What is it? Darius pulled out a small holo device and activated it. A red symbol appeared. The crest of the Varesha High Council. They put a bounty on you, Darius said. Your own people. Zisha's hands clenched into fists. Of course, the Varesha hated weakness, and now they hated her even more. For proving them wrong. How much? She asked. Darius grinned. Enough to make even experienced bounty hunters interested. Zisha exhaled slowly. She had expected this. The Varesha never accepted those they saw as unworthy. And now, instead of ignoring her, they'd wanted her dead. They fear you, Darius said, watching her reaction. They see what you've become, and that scares them. Zisha looked at the horizon, her mind racing. She had spent her whole life trying to prove her worth to her people, but now she understood something. She didn't need their approval. She had trained, fought, and survived. Not for them, for herself. Darius leaned back, stretching his arms. So, what's next? We could lay low. Disappear for a while. Zisha shook her head. No more running. She turned to Darius, her eyes burning with determination. We go to them. Darius raised an eyebrow. To the Varesha. She nodded. They think I'm weak. They think they can erase me. She stood up, gripping the handle of her shock blade. I'll show them how wrong they are. Darius grinned. Now that's the kind of crazy I like. The decision was made. Zisha would not hide. She would not run. She was going to face her people. And this time, they would fear her. The massive warship of the Varesha High Council floated in the darkness of space like a metal fortress. Zisha stood at the cockpit window of Darius' ship, staring at it. This was the place she had once dreamed of belonging to. Now she was coming back, not as a rejected outcast, but as a warrior. Darius leaned against the control panel, smirking. So, what's the plan? Walk in and say, hey, remember me. Zisha tightened the straps on her combat armor. No, I walk in, and they remember me forever. Darius laughed. I like your style. He activated the ship's comms. Varesha warship, this is Shadowfang. I have the outcast Zisha. I'm here to claim the bounty. There was a pause. Then a cold voice answered. Permission to dock. Do not try anything foolish. Zisha exhaled. This was it. The docking bay was lined with armored Varesha guards. Their violet skin and sharp features looked familiar, but Zisha no longer felt any connection to them. A tall, battle-scarred warrior stepped forward. Commander Varish. He had been the one to call her weak. The one who had ordered her exile. He sneered. So the outcast returns. And with a human pet. Darius smirked. Careful, big guy. I bite. Varish ignored him, focusing on Zisha. You are nothing, girl. You think returning will change that. Zisha stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. I have changed. Varish laughed. Prove it. He tossed his weapon aside and took a battle stance. The other Varesha warriors formed a circle. The challenge was clear. Zisha removed her cloak and faced him. No weapons, no tricks, just the fight. Varish attacked first, fast and brutal. Zisha dodged, her new training kicking in. She wasn't the weak girl he had cast out. She was a hunter now. She let him think he was winning, dodging but staying close. Then, when he overextended, she struck, quick and precise. A punch to his ribs, a kick to his knee, a strike to his throat. Varish stumbled, eyes wide with shock. Zisha didn't stop. She moved like a shadow, striking from unexpected angles. Every lesson from Darius, every fight, every hardship, it all led to this moment. Varish roared and charged, but Zisha sidestepped and delivered a final, crushing blow to his jaw. He collapsed. Silence filled the room. Zisha stood over him, breathing hard. She turned to the watching warriors. I was weak, she said, but weakness is not permanent. I learned. I adapted. She lifted her chin. And now, I am stronger than any of you. The warriors exchanged glances. Some nodded. Others looked away. Darius whistled. Well, that was fun. What's next? Zisha looked at the High Council chamber doors. She had one last battle left. The final fight, against the ones who had ordered her death. The massive doors of the Varesha High Council chamber slid open with a deep metallic groan. Zisha stepped inside, her boots echoing against the polished floor. Darius walked beside her, hands resting casually on his belt, but his eyes sharp, ready for a fight. At the center of the chamber sat the High Council, 5 elder Varisha warriors dressed in dark robes. Their eyes burned with cold authority as they glared down at Zisha. You dare return? One of them hissed. Zisha stood tall. You exiled me because I was weak. You put a bounty on me because you feared I would prove you wrong. She clenched her fists. Now I stand before you, stronger than any of your warriors. The eldest counselor, Lord Zarian, narrowed his eyes. Strength is not just in words, outcast. It is in blood. He gestured to the guards surrounding the room. Kill her. The guards raised their weapons. Zisha moved first. She leaped forward, dodging energy blasts as she closed the distance. With quick, brutal strikes, she took down the first 2 guards, using their own weapons against them. Darius pulled out his blaster. I was hoping for some action. He fired, covering Zisha as she fought her way through the circle of enemies. Zisha dodged a heavy swing from a massive warrior, then countered with a precise strike to his throat. Another guard lunged at her with a plasma blade, but she ducked, twisting behind him and slamming him into the ground. The fight was fast, chaotic, but Zisha controlled it. She was the hunter now. Within minutes, the last guard fell. The room was silent. Zisha turned to the High Council, breathing hard. Is that all you have? Lord Zarian scowled and stood from his throne. You are a disgrace to our people. He drew his own blade, a curved, deadly weapon. I will end this myself. Zisha took her stance. Zarian attacked with precise, calculated strikes. He was fast, faster than Varish. But Zisha had fought faster. She had fought stronger, and she had won. She blocked, dodged, and countered, forcing him back step by step. Zarian growled. You fight like a human. Zisha smirked. That's why I'm winning. With a final move, she feinted left and struck right, knocking his weapon away. She grabbed him by the collar and slammed him onto the floor. The great Lord Zarian, defeated. Zisha stood over him. The remaining council members stared in stunned silence. You called me weak, Zisha said, her voice steady. Now, I ask you, who is weak? Zarian clenched his jaw, but said nothing. He knew the truth. She had won. Zisha turned to the council. The Varesha must change. The strongest are not those born powerful. The strongest are those who adapt. The council members exchanged glances, one by one. They bowed their heads. Zisha had done the impossible. She was no longer an outcast. She was a warrior.